Hey kids, Flexing Teacher Weber here. I hope you're doing great. We're going to continue looking at measurement topics today. We're going to look at the idea of area. Now, this is something you studied before. I always like to start with what we already know, and gradually we're going to move into some other topics. But today's topic will hopefully look somewhat familiar. We're going to look at area of rectangles and area of figures made up by rectangles called composite figures. Now, before we do anything with area, you need to understand what area means. Area means the number of squares or square units needed to cover a space. So if I was looking at this red square and I wanted to find the area of that red square, I would want to find the number of these blue squares that would cover the inside of this space. So area is the inside of a space. You'd want to know the area if you wanted to know how much carpet to put in your house, or how much floor tile to put in your house, or if you wanted to paint a wall, what's the area or the space that covers the walls. That's what area is. So if I was to, the program I'm using doesn't allow me to do this, but if I wanted to figure out how many these square tiles, these ones right here, would cover that red square, I could just place them in that red square. Now, I think if I was to estimate this based on the size of this tile, I could probably fit about, I'm guessing about 25 of these tiles, these blue tiles in the red one. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm not being very accurate there. It's not really allowing me to do that. But I'd say about 25 of these would fit in that red square. And so we could probably say the area of this red square is about 25 square units, because we are literally figuring out the number of squares that would fit in that space. And square units can be all sorts of things. They can be square feet, they can be square meters, they can be square inches. In this case, it's not a particular shape, it's just some sort of square unit. I don't really have the particular measurement of it. But anyway, the main thing to remember about area is area means the number of square units needed to cover a space. So let's look at an application of this with rectangles. Now, with rectangles, there's a math equation we use to figure out the area of the rectangle. The math equation is the area of a rectangle equals the length times the width. So if you're talking about a rectangle, if I look at this rectangle right here, normally we consider the longer side the length and the shorter side the width. And remember that the opposite sides of a rectangle are the same length. So if I was to write this as a math equation with variables, I would write this as a capital A for area, and then a small l for length, and a small w for width. Now you'll notice there I've used no multiplication sign, because as we start to study more algebra, often that multiplication sign x represents an unknown number and things can get confusing. So often when we're studying area or area math equations, we don't use a multiplication symbol to show multiplication. We just don't have any symbol. So if you have two variables beside each other like that, in this case the L and the W, this means the length multiplied by the width, and that's the math equation to represent area for a rectangle. Now, let's do a question like this. So I'm going to flip forward. So we have a rectangular room here, and the question says calculate the area of this room. Now, when I get you to do these kinds of math problems, I want you to always start off with the math equation. So we're going to start with our math equation for area of a rectangle. Area equals length multiplied by width. We're going to work down the page just like we did when we were solving math equations. Area equals. Now to show multiplication, I can use parentheses just like I did with algebra. I'm going to write 9.8 for the length, and I'm going to put it in parentheses, and I'm going to write 4 for the width. I don't know what that is, so I'm going to go over here to some scrap paper, and I'm going to do a little multiplication. 8 times 4 is 32. I'm going to write down the 2 and carry the 3. 9 times 4 is 36, plus 3 is 39. Now in the question there is 1 decimal spot, so in the answer I need to have 1 decimal spot. So that means the area of this rectangle is 39 and 2/10. Now, units of measurements matter. So when we're talking about area, we're talking about the number of squares that will cover a space. In this case, we're talking about square meters. So squares that have 1 meter on every side, that's actually a pretty big square. So this is a pretty big area. So 39 and 2/10 meters squared, I would write as 39 and 2/10 with the meter symbol and then the exponent 2, indicating that there are 39 and 2/10 squares. So these guys that would cover that space, and they would all be 1 meter length on their sides. That's a pretty big area when you're talking about meters squared. Now we'd be talking about a gymnasium or something like that. Now what's the application of this? Now that we know the area of this space, I'm going to flip forward. So calculate the cost to carpet this room if carpet is $10 per square meter. So if this was a room and you knew the area of your room was 39 and 2/10 meters squared, and you knew that every square meter of carpet cost $10, well, to carpet that room, you would take your area, 39 and 2/10, and you would multiply that. In this case, the cost is $10 per square meter. Now I'm just going to multiply by 10. I'm not going to add the decimal places in. I'm going to keep this simple because early in the year we did a mental math strategy for multiplying by 10. When you're multiplying by 10, you just flip the decimal 1 to the right. So when we work this out, this works out to, just playing around with my pen there we go. This works out to $392. Now, money should always have 2 decimal spots and the dollar sign in front. So that's what it would cost to carpet this room if carpet was $39 was $10 per square meter. That's an application of area. How much is it going to cost to carpet a room or tile a room or put flooring on a room or whatever? In the next video I do, probably 2 of them, I'm going to show you how to calculate the area of composite figures made of rectangles, because not every room in the world is exactly a rectangle. Hopefully you're getting the idea. Flexing Teacher Weber, out.